Welcome to Decentralized News. Please do your own research. This is not financial advice. We have a bunch of news to get into, so we're going to get right into it. Aussie, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Feeling a lot better today.
Yes. Just briefly, we're going to cover Bitcoin news, kind of ETF effects on the gold price, U.S. banks getting some FOMO, some potential sell pressure that may still be out there, some nation state mining out of Ethiopia. We also have ETH news, a bunch of updates there, the Deacon update, ETF approval, just overall increased activity on the Ethereum chain. Macro news, CPI numbers came out hot, how it affects the potential pivot, and then a bunch of altcoin quick hits to cover. We'll cover as much as we can in a couple of minutes, all this week's alpha in there. Today is Monday recording. We're going to do ETFs updates to start, but markets are closed. So not a lot of activity. We've seen every day the ETFs have been open. It pumps a little bit, but we'll get into that. Briefly, just to go back to the Super Bowl, because we missed last week, there were a couple of fun little stories out of the Super Bowl. Did you watch the Super Bowl out there in Canada?
I watched some of it. I was watching actually in the Utes Discord for a good while, but didn't watch too much of it.
Yeah, if I swear, if I didn't go to work, I wouldn't have watched it. I've checked out. But one of the things I do watch for is, will there be any crypto advertising? That was seen a couple of years ago. We had the Crypto Bowl seen as the top of the market right before everything fell apart for the last couple of years. This year, there were no Super Bowl ads, but it doesn't mean there wasn't any news about Bitcoin. And I actually heard this kind of just through word of mouth. But Drake made the news. So people are hearing about Bitcoin that maybe normally wouldn't have, but through social media. So he placed a $1 million bet, I guess at stake.com, using Bitcoin and won. He won around $500,000 worth of Bitcoin by betting on Kansas City. So that was making the rounds in social media. And the other one that was out there was Jack Dorsey had a Satoshi shirt on. So they were showing him a lot. I think if you're on crypto Twitter, you definitely saw that. But that was the two little stories that came out of the Super Bowl that I thought were exciting for Bitcoin and crypto in general.
Yeah, just the fact that the news of Drake making this big bet with Bitcoin is making the rounds means that more people will be exposed to it and gain some interest. And then Jack Dorsey wearing the Satoshi shirt, I think that maybe is going to be just more of a big crypto Twitter thing than it is going to be a big public thing, but it's still good advertising.
In terms of new users, yeah, Drake probably makes a bigger deal. I have to agree with you there. But the other big deal around Bitcoin has really been about the ETFs that were launched. We're like well into a month into it. Altogether, the suite of new Bitcoin-backed funds have attracted 11.4 billion in capital inflows. We're at 5 weeks right now. Just to compare this, the big story was also the GBTC outflows, because they were converting and they had the highest fee. So a lot of people selling their GBTC to get into these other ones with lower fees. They have seen about 7 billion of outflows. So we're still net positive of about 6 billion, roughly right around there. The other interesting story coming out of this, and now that we're 5 weeks in, besides just the steady inflow of money coming into the market, is the top 14 gold ETFs have experienced significant outflows of 2.4 billion, while the Bitcoin ETFs have been getting the inflows. The current market cap of gold is around 3 times as large as Bitcoin. And that's actually been claimed as a significant success for Bitcoin, is that within a month, we're already a third of the gold ETF market cap. But yeah, maybe a change in terms of what people think of as store of value with a Bitcoin ETF.
Yeah, to see the net outflows out of gold, I wonder if that also has to do with inflation, whether people are starting to see the market heat up and think that the pivot's coming, so they're pivoting out of gold. I see this generally. We're seeing the ETFs perform well. We're seeing adoption of the ETFs. Let's look at the price. And when the ETFs came out, we were trading somewhere around 40K. We're now trading somewhere around 52K. So we were looking at almost a 50% increase in price. Not quite, but getting close to it. Probably about 33% or 34%. So that's a pretty good increase just from the release of the ETFs, and they've only been out 5 weeks. So
Right.
We're definitely seeing a nice appreciation, even with the GBTC selling right now. It's something that could very clearly have a continued positive impact on the price of Bitcoin in the next 6 months, year, decade to come.
Yeah, the ETF issuers are buying right now around 10 to 12 times the amount of BTC produced daily. So this is some serious buying pressure. And it's leading to about a 2% increase a day. We're not seeing it today, like I said, the markets are closed. But yeah, around 2% or $1,000 a day, with some calling for a pre-halving all-time high since we're just in totally uncharted waters. And so we have all this new buy pressure. We have a Bitcoin 10 to 12 times the amount being produced daily. There's 900 being produced daily right now, and that's
Yeah.
going to get cut in half in April to 450. And there are, just in terms of this ETF, there are some saying that financial advisors really don't like to recommend things, especially when it first launches. So they're going to wait 90 days, around 3 months, before we really start to see them recommending these products. So if that buy pressure keeps up and we're really just seeing the beginning of it and the inflation rate gets cut in half, yeah, it's exciting. Maybe some exciting times ahead this year.
Yeah, the Digital Assets Financial Council for Financial Planners, DACFP. I know someone that works there, and Rick Edelman, who's the CEO of the company, said in a survey that they've done recently, 77% of financial planner respondents said that their clients have expressed an interest in Bitcoin and are looking at, on average, a 2 to 3% allocation of their portfolio into Bitcoin, and that would represent about 150 billion. Right now, we're talking less. We've got like 11 billion, so we're talking about a 15x in terms of total volume. He did say that this was like a 3 to 5 year target. It's not a 1 year target, but it still gives a bit of an idea of where we could go in terms of the total ETF market cap in the next few years.
Yeah, exciting times. This is really a big change in the market. I'm not the only one getting excited, though. There are some big banks in the United States that recently wrote a letter to the SEC, and they might be getting a little bit of FOMO as well. The major banking institutions in the United States are lobbying the Securities and Exchange Commission to reevaluate its crypto asset definition, aiming to secure a more prominent role in the burgeoning cryptocurrency market. This push comes from the most recent approval of the spot ETF coalition, comprising of Bank Policy Institute, America's Banker Association, Financial Services Forum, and the Securities Industry and Financial Markets Association penned a letter to Gary Gensler emphasizing the absence of U.S. banks as custodians. So that's the issue they have. They want them to tweak a rule to make it possible. Matt Hogan from Bitwise comments on this. He interprets the coalition's letter as an indication of a shift in Washington's regulatory stance towards crypto assets, while Bloomberg noted that U.S. banks are interested in participating in this new wave of finance, and there was growing frustration among the banks over their exclusion from facilitating spot Bitcoin ETFs for customers. So yeah, maybe big banks starting to feel this feeling we've all known about for years, this FOMO feeling.
Oh, I think this is essentially the negative attitude that we got from Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan and some of those big banks, I think has to do with that FOMO of losing their custody role and their ability to hold their customers hostage in some sense that they've had up until now. And so we could definitely see the big banks getting that FOMO in terms of, oh, people are getting into the ETFs. What if they start getting into other crypto, and then we can't hold them hostage for their money anymore? So we need the SEC to loosen up those rules so that we can keep playing that role.
I hope you all are enjoying the content. Please consider a like and a subscription. We do appreciate it. We work hard to bring you the news, and nothing makes us feel better than the new subscription, like, comment. We love it. Thanks very much. Not all good news with Bitcoin. There's some sell pressure coming in too, isn't there?
Yeah, we do have some sell pressure coming in, especially with Genesis. So if you guys don't remember Genesis, we covered it way back in the early days of the channel. They were associated with Gemini, and Digital Coin Group, DCG, were doing lending for Gemini's Gemini Earn program. And they had about 1.1 billion or so tied up in FTX when it collapsed. And that caused them to go bankrupt. They ended up having to declare bankruptcy, and as part of some of the settlement that's going on with FTX, they've got about 1.6 billion in Grayscale ETF shares that they need to dump. They've just gotten the clearance from bankruptcy court to sell those shares, which are about 35.9 million shares, which are worth about 1.6 billion. So if we look at trading volume for the ETFs, that's probably 2 to 3 days worth of trading volume in terms of sell pressure right now from Genesis dumping their shares of ETF. So it'll be interesting to see what that does. I think that this could essentially be just like what FTX had to do and see a trade sideways for a few days, maybe a little bit of down pressure depending on how much they decide to sell in a day. But I don't think it's a massive dump or a huge fear, at least not yet.
The other kind of pending one is, and it's been lingering for a while, is MTGOX. There has been some rumors that they're going to start letting go of this like 200,000 Bitcoin to pay off some creditors. So there was a Reddit post about verifying KYC so that they can start sending BTC, and they are going to pay out in BTC. That was the other thing, at least a large chunk of it. So there were some rumors that this is going to happen in the next month or this past month up until the next month. But like I said, it's rumor mill right now. What we do know is that there is a deadline of October 31st of this year for them to pay it out. Unless that officially changes, there's the threat until basically the end of the summer, early fall, that there could be some selling, I think, at some point coming from this MTGOX thing. So just keep an eye on that one too. There's also the miners too. We didn't really officially include this in, but miners are under some pressure to sell and also just expand their market share while they can, it seems like. So there's always selling pressure from the miners, but yeah, it seems like more buy pressure than anything. And speaking of mining, this I thought was an exciting story. I love these kind of game theory type of stories, and they're always like the governments don't officially say it, but we have Ethiopia making some news this week about possibly doing some Bitcoin mining. So the Ethiopian government is set to begin mining Bitcoin through a new partnership with Data Center Service, a subsidiary of West Data Group, and this is according to Ethiopia-based Hash Labs mining CEO Cal Casa. So this is not coming from the government. This is coming from Hash Labs mining CEO Cal Casa. The partnership was announced by the country's sovereign wealth fund, Ethiopia Investment Holdings, EIH, on February 15th. Under the collaboration, the sovereign wealth fund will invest $250 million in cutting-edge infrastructure for data mining, AI, to help Ethiopia kind of transition into this new age, right? Casa said the deal includes setting up Bitcoin mining, so part of this $250 million. So let's see. But the government has yet to confirm the news officially. But I thought I always loved that.
It's interesting. It'd be a big move. I feel like that could make them a big target, but we know Bhutan's doing it. We know El Salvador's getting ready to set theirs up with their volcano bonds. So there's definitely some game theory coming out. I really think that software is playing itself out, maybe less in a competition sense and more in a wealth kind of basically maintaining their economy sense right now for a lot of countries. So we'll see what that means in the later future, and especially as Bitcoin mining gets more competitive. But you know what? Getting their foot in the door doesn't seem like a bad idea for certain countries, especially if there's not a ton of other options, at least not evident options for us right there in front and center.
Yeah, and the other thing that is fascinating to me is just whether you have some potentially really big players. We're talking about nation states, right? Oil producing nations, Russia, United States, China, just like huge players, India potentially, right? Long term. But it's like, what are they going to want to do? Are they going to want to buy things off exchanges? Or they want to start mining? Like, what's the most cost effective way for them to get in the game? And mining definitely seems like a road that will be traveled by a lot of these countries, assuming it all comes to fruition. We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, especially if the country's got cheap electricity. I think that's the big important thing. If you can mine for next to nothing, then per kilowatt, then it starts making a lot of sense. If you're mining on expensive electricity, then the math really doesn't make sense, especially right now. I have got some friends that are in the mining game, and generally they're like, you need to be mining between 3 and some say 6, some say up to 8 cents a kilowatt hour, a US dollar, for it to make financial sense right now. If you're mining at anything higher than that, you are more than likely bleeding money right now.
Losing money, at least in the short term, yeah. And it seems like it'll remain and only increasingly be a competitive market. A
Yeah.
very competitive market.
Yeah, to shout out the consensus episode that I did with Obsidian on Friday, which I don't know when it will go live. Usually it's live on Tuesday or Wednesday on the 100X podcast. I talked about how Bitcoin mining is going to get less and less decentralized as it continues to get more and more competitive. It's already becoming less and less decentralized and more centralized, even compared to proof of stake mining. I think proof of stake blockchains will have the ability to remain decentralized over time, whereas the competition in proof of work mining, especially for Bitcoin, but for other blockchains where difficulty gets harder over time, it will just start getting more and more competitive and more centralized as it gets too expensive.
We'll see how that plays out. We've really held tight on Bitcoin, but Ethereum's making a lot of news this week too.
Oh, yeah. Ethereum has been blowing up the charts. I was looking at this month. We're 19 days in at the time of recording, and Ethereum's up 28% this month. Ethereum had been seen as a little bit of a lagger in the market up until now, but with almost 30% up in a month, that's pretty insane, especially considering Bitcoin is I don't even think it's half that. I don't have the number right in front of me right now. So that's pretty nuts, really taking a big move, and this likely has to do with a few things at the very least. One of them being the Deacon upgrade that is upcoming. We're expecting the Deacon upgrade in mid-March, almost a month from now exactly, on I believe it's March 13th. So that's a pretty big announcement coming. But then we've also had some staggering numbers looking at L2s. The TVL on L2s is growing astronomically, with Arbitrum, Base, and Optimism all taking a higher than ever TVL up until now.
Yeah, Bitcoin's been keeping pretty good pace with Ethereum for the month, but in the last week or two, Bitcoin has really outpaced it. But yeah, we're seeing some exciting news come out of Ethereum. Like you said, the Deacon update. We also have the potential ETF approval coming in May. So the big date is May 23rd. That's when the first final. So far, any deadline that's come up has just been delayed. So we may not really hear any significant news until May 23rd. But there are some bullish narratives on the horizon for ETH. Yeah, there's just a lot going on. And then besides that, have you heard of these ERC-404 tokens?
I've heard about them a little bit. I know that they caused a massive spike in gas last week. It was painful trying to bridge onto Scroll. My fees were getting into the
airdrop farmer is kind of annoying, I bet.
Oh god, it was terrible because I was trying to do like native bridge transactions, and it was to bridge like $300 or $400. They were trying to charge me $150 at times, and I was just like, there's no way I'm paying that if I'm only bridging $400. So I didn't end up getting a lot of airdrop farming done. It was pretty painful. I was just especially considering how much faster we're seeing transactions being done on L2s. To have those 404s happening on the ETH native layer was just ridiculous, considering there were 6.8 times more transactions being done on L2s than there were on mainnet. It was like, why do you got to be doing ERC 404s on mainnet? Just go do them on the L2s like you're supposed to.
This reminds me a lot of the original excitement that came around ordinals. And I don't know if you remember, it caused major fee spikes on the BTC network. Also, when ordinals started popping up on AVAX chains or on Polygon chains, there was like massive fee spikes for like a week or something like that on those chains as well. So we may see something similar that roll down. But anyway, let's just break down a little bit what are these ERC 404s. The ERC 404 is an experimental, unofficial new token on the Ethereum chain. So it combines ERC 20 and ERC 721 standards, which is basically token standards and NFT standards, So in the current form, NFTs exist as a one-for-one asset. You can't break them apart. Whereas tokens, you can buy fractions of a whole. So one of the key problems that ERC 404 sets out to solve is it allows multiple wallets to directly own a single NFT, and in the future create a use case where that specific exposure can be tokenized. So that's the basic excitement about it. Before, you would have to go stake it with a specific platform, and then that platform holds the NFT, and maybe you can
Yeah,
divide
you
them
use an
there.
escrow service essentially to fractionalize the NFT, which carried a lot of smart contract risk at the very least, and sometimes some fees associated with it that weren't super advantageous.
And then you're dealing with just like a smaller platform, or who knows, maybe there's just no market there in the end. But now, I don't know, it's just created like a sport. So Ethereum network, like you said, network gas fees reached an 8th-month high amid a frenzy of interest in this. So there was the first one that kicked it off with a project called Pandora, and they launched this experimental standard. So that's what kicked it off. If you haven't heard of it, that's the name of it, Pandora. And then there was Defrogs, and a whole roster of other ERC 404 projects have followed. And according to a anonymous user, he's a co-founder of a gas auditing firm, Gaslight. An ERC 404 token uses 3 times the amount of gas as an average NFT transaction. So that's also maybe causing a problem.
Oh, good God.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting too. But anyway, we have this excitement around this new thing. Could be a flash in the pan, could be like ordinals though, and like change the game. You know what I mean? We don't know. So we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, be careful out there. Do your own research.
Yeah. That being said, that's super interesting because we've also seen Ethereum NFT volume approach a yearly high as of this last week, with Pudgy Penguins eyeing the number 2 spot in the overall rankings for projects based on floor price. So we're seeing a massive increase in trading volume. It's not necessarily mints. And so this is super important. It's really, we're seeing the old blue chip projects and blue chip projects that have like pulled ahead. Pudgy Penguins is one that's really pulled ahead in this last bear market, kind of reorienting themselves and positioning themselves. I really suggest watching my video that I posted on Friday, talking all about how NFT projects are positioning themselves for airdrops. It's definitely worth watching, and it'll explain partially why Pudgy Penguins is doing so well. They've also started developing Pudgy World, which is an interactive gaming experience that will come to the Apple Vision Pro. Also, check out my Metaverse video, why the Apple Vision Pro could bring back gaming and the Metaverse in this next bull market, because that is all something that's driving Pudgy Penguin price in this last few weeks.
And it seems like Yuga Labs, the owner of a couple of other of the big NFT projects, they have some metaverse stuff going on too. It's not Apple Vision Pro related necessarily, but they have their own building going on. And these are the groups that are just still building, still strong communities, that kind of stuff. And the Apple Vision Pro, that's pretty exciting. That's brand new tech, and I could see why that, beyond the airdrops and stuff, I did hear something about that. That's a big part of the narrative these days. But the fact they have something connected with this kind of new tech coming out maybe explains a little bit why they're surging right now.
Oh, absolutely. They're doing quite well. Moonbirds got bought by Yuga Labs, so that's bringing some interest back to Moonbirds. D-Gods and Utes are potentially up for some airdrops, and Mad Lads are also kicking butt, but they're on Solana. That's just a few of the big ones. Bored Ape Yacht Club and Mutant Ape Yacht Club have the other side, which is all part of the Yuga Labs ecosystem. When we look at other things that are showing how strong ETH is, we've got the validator entry queue seeing a massive renewed interest in the last while. It's the highest since October 6th, and this probably at least partially has to do with the whole new restaking narrative that we're seeing on ETH based on EigenLayer. Check out my video on that. But also just the bullishness in the market. Everyone feels like ETH's probably hit its floor and they want to get involved and start earning some ETH rewards.
Yeah, basically, ETH validator, you need 30 ETH to run a validator. You have to wait for an epoch to end. The epochs end pretty quickly, but it forms a line, it forms a backlog. So we saw a spike in that. So that's what that's all about. You earn about 3.5 to 4%, which is not more than the 10-year quote unquote risk free, but there's just more upside, right, with ETH. And then you have everything that's going on, right? We have L2s taken off, total value locked. We have the price just surging. We have the Deacon update coming up. You have potential ETF. You have ERC 404s, NFT volume going up. There's just so many things going on the Ethereum network right now. And this is on the back of what ETH on exchange is going down to becoming deflationary. All these other narratives that have been going on for a long time. All they need to do is get the darn gas fees down, or just the L2s and things like that.
Just let L2s take over.
Yeah. And it just becomes like a base layer, security layer, or a whale layer, you know,
essentially. And I think that's really cool. What is also really cool is dropping a like and a subscribe on the to this video. It really helps us out, helps boost the video. Let us know how you feel about ETH and if any of these big NFT projects are catching your eye, and what you think maybe about restaking. Super interested to hear everybody's comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Should we get to macro? It was quite an interesting week last week in the last little while.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of macro. CPI came in hot. It looked like maybe they were turning the corner on CPI. Comes in hot. Is 2% even possible? That's what I'm beginning with. Are they going to cut before they get to 2%? And is that not? That's where my head's at with this. It came in hot. It's going to turn down the expectations for when the pivot's going to come. It's pushing it out into the summer, it seems like, at this point. Maybe early summer. But it seems like that number gets pushed out further and further. We're definitely past the halving at this point, right?
Yeah, we're definitely past the halving at this point. I don't know what to say if they'll cut before 2%. I think they just need to be on the path for 2%. They need to be below 3%. And probably, ideally, below 2.5% before they start cutting.
And there was no way to interpret the numbers came in as good, right?
No. Oh, God, no. There was no good way, especially given how strong core was as well. Core was almost stronger than regular CPI, and that is the opposite of what you wanted to see in this last report.
Next, there's not a lot of news coming out this week as far as data. I think there's always some kind of unemployment numbers coming out throughout the week. But next week there's GDP, but there's also PCE, so some more inflation data. So we'll see what comes of that. We don't have a meeting until a month from now, so we got a ways to go. So a lot can change. But yeah, not looking like we're going to get a pivot anytime soon. It's usually we have to pivot and then wait a while before it really starts to get bullish on risk assets, as far as using the Fed and interest rates as a reason why, you know.
Yeah, March 20th, which was the original date that everyone was expecting pivot, is now almost 92% no change expected, with only about 8.5% expecting a cut. May, which is starting to become a little bit more of a favorite, we're expecting it's almost at a 50-50 toss-up on whether we see a cut in May or not. And then the same really drags out. It starts leaning a bit more favorably towards a cut as of June 12th. So both May 1st and June 12th are post-halving for Bitcoin. And even then, I'd say June 12th is 70%. So I would say that's not even a fully confident date just yet.
With the ETF and all the inflows and all the narratives around that, it's looking like we may get an early start to the typical halving. There's always chance for pullbacks in there. Do your own research, please. Not financial advice, but the pivot could be seen as something as like fuel on a fire that's already burning down the road a little bit.
I would say that's totally possible. Fuel on the fire feels like that could actually be the thing that kind of sets off the blow off top in some essences. Usually when we talk about Bitcoin and when it really takes off, it's actually Bitcoin starts taking off after the last cut. And so looking at a last cut sometime in mid 2025, that would make a lot of sense for really adding fuel to that fire.
If you made it this far into the show, you're probably deep into this like we are, and we'll get into some of the more smaller market cap news and notes. We're going to fire through these pretty quick, just give you a little alpha throughout the week, things to keep an eye on. One little fun story was OpenAI introduced Sora, a text-to-prompt video creating AI video creation. A lot of interesting kind of tweets circling around that. We'll see how that changes things. Chainlink in the news. Spain telecom giant Telefonica partnered with Chainlink. So Chainlink continuing adoption with traditional companies and the utility company at that. What else are you seeing out there that interests you?
Solana and Filecoin have announced, not necessarily partnership, but Solana's using Filecoin to make its block history more accessible. So I think that's pretty big for Filecoin.
Better than a partnership. They're just using it.
Yeah. Starknet, which has announced their airdrop, will be launching their token when this video publishes. Will be doing their airdrop. It's currently trading at an $18 billion valuation over the counter, but I'm not crazy excited about this one. Magic Eden is getting ready to launch on ETH on February 27th, so that's pretty big. And then this is one that's also catching my eye. NVIDIA earnings. They're coming out on February 21st, so a couple days from now. And we're already seeing some pretty strong AI kind of growth in those tokens after Sora, but I can expect strong NVIDIA earnings will also pump AI coins some more.
And then there's SEI's highly anticipated version 2 upgrade, SEI. I'm not really 100% sure how to say that. Anticipated version 2 upgrade has just launched on public DevNet. Main launch will be next. We also have the Blur token is making some news. So they're involved with Blast. Blast will make a big announcement next week. Blur has shown a lot of strength lately, and there may be a airdrop for Blur stakers involved with this Blast launch. We also have Matic and AVAX in the news a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Matic has announced that their Ag Layer version 1 mainnet will launch on February 23rd. So this is all towards their unified liquidity system and making cross-chain UX seamless. So that's really bullish. Honestly, we're both big holders of Matic, so I will put that caveat here, but this is one of the reasons why I'm so bullish on Matic. It's definitely pumping my bags right now. Matic's up around $1, so that's a good at least 20% rise, if not more, in the last few days that I've noticed. And
we've been talking about Matic for a while. They still have a lot of potential for growth, but
not financial advice. Just wanted to make that disclaimer. We're also both big AVAX holders, or semi-big AVAX holders.
I don't hold anything, but I do like AVAX.
Yeah, we both hold AVAX. There's an unlock coming for about $380 million worth of AVAX.
This is one of the things that kept me away from AVAX for a long time, was just their inflation rate was higher than most. But anyway, go ahead.
That's coming on February 22nd. While it's a large dollar figure, it's only about 2.6% of the AVAX supply, so not that big of an overall unlock, but could affect the price short term. They've also got some pretty cool stuff coming out with games. A game off the grid that's building on their system is just got approved for console, so it's going to be the first console game, and they're using the AVAX subnet infrastructure.
Yeah, that's the thing. They've got subnets, which is just a different approach, and we are seeing GameFi being attracted to this, and that's going to be a big narrative going forward. That's one of the things that attracts me about AVAX for sure. Just the whole idea of subnets. It's just a different angle.
Absolutely. So quite a bit of interest right there. That's our news and notes for this week. I want to thank everybody for watching this week's episode of Decentralized News. Please remember, we're not financial advisors. Please do your own research. This is for education and entertainment purposes only. A little summary: Bitcoin, the ETFs, lots of bullishness there, although we do have some potential bearish news coming out of GBTC. ETH is absolutely killing it with some massive TVL upgrades on L2s and transactions on L2s. And then the macro is looking a little bit dark right now, with CPI coming in a little bit hot and a pivot not being as clear as previously expected. If you like the content, drop a subscribe, share it with a friend. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, everyone.